Hey guys! How are all of you beautiful people doing? I hope you all are having a great day. And yes, this is the next part of I Became Shikamaru Nara, where the world that once seemed fictional is now real. Shinobi, chakra. It's all so close. After being reborn in the body of a deceased child, the hero has a second chance to live this life anew. Having found a new home and clan, he will have a long and difficult journey. But the object that was found in the past and changed his fate is still with him. Now, with this power, he will follow the path of the strongest Shinobi. So without any delay, let's start the series. As soon as Shikamaru got rid of the weights, he did not hesitate and immediately attacked the Hokage. The next thing he was going to use was to do it unexpectedly, to catch the old man by surprise. He can expect anything, but what Shikamaru has in store for him should definitely affect him. If he isn't shocked, a moment of surprise could be a good chance to strike too. Raizeenn was not going to be polite, it was sparring, albeit with a child. He knew for sure that there were only a few children with such skills at the age of 6 in the entire history of Konoha, so he seriously wanted to show his mistakes in Taijutsu, even if it would be a little painful for the guy. Shikamaru's speed increased significantly, but for a kid-level Shinobi, it was still as slow as that of a simple genin. Therefore, Raizeenn easily dodged the blows and tried not to fall on bone spikes. The same blows that he delivered himself were often blocked by strong bones. But, every time the old man hit, Shikamaru always changed his face. The skinny old man's blows were not as weak as it might seem. He calculated the strength correctly based on the strength of Shikatsumiyaku's bones. Therefore, each blow was given a painful vibration throughout the body, and sometimes the regrown bones cracked. Asterisk bark asterisk asterisk bark asterisk asterisk bark asterisk. After exchanging a couple of dozen punches, Shikamaru made a quick sweep, but Raizeenn, without much enthusiasm, stepped aside and hit a roundhouse. Shikamaru shifted the bone to the side and slashed Kiji's leg. He was only slightly scratched, and the leg also flew into the area of the guy's head. Just at that moment the unexpected happened. The eyes of the child, still black up to that moment, suddenly acquired a bright red hue. As soon as Raizeenn saw those eyes, he stared at them in shock, and his attack speed decreased. Shikamaru did not waste time. Using the Sharingan, the guy instantly calculated the optimal way to evade and counter-attack. Head sharply tilted to the side, a bloody streak from glowing eyes swept after Shikamaru. At an unusual angle, he instantly crossed Raizeenn's leg, simultaneously cutting it with a sharp bone that had grown from his palm. Before jumping away from his leg, he tensed himself well and sank the bone as deep as possible inside. At the same instant, he pushed away from her and was directly over the head of the old man. Raizeenn quickly recovered from his stupor. Although he was struck to the core, he was still an experienced Shinobi and literally brought his condition back to normal in an instant. It was at this point that Shikamaru did an incredible trick using the reactions from his new eyes. There are 2 of them. Tutomo, incredible, once again meeting those glowing bloody eyes, Raizeenn clenched his teeth and tried to break the distance. But it was at this moment that Shikamaru cut through his leg from the back and, thrusting it harder into his thigh, pushed off and jumped. An unpleasant pain immediately reflected on the Hokage's face. Now, Raizeenn finally got angry. As soon as Shikamaru's reinforced fist was ready to meet the old man's face, he was instantly caught by a strong, flabby hand. Asterisk clap asterisk. All the energy and power of the blow was instantly stopped by a simple movement of the Hokage. Shikamaru, at that moment, felt a slight fear. He felt strength, tremendous strength. terrifying chakra and incredible physical strength. He was sure Raizeenn was able to literally hand out his fist, no matter how he strengthened it. Without panic, Shikamaru immediately wanted to escape and break the distance. But the fist was as if in a steel grip, and having noticed a slight movement of the enemy's chakra, Shikamaru knew for sure that he would not be able to say hello now. But even anticipating the attack, in just a few milliseconds Raizeenn's palm landed on the guy's chest. All that was left for Shikamaru was to protect her in every possible way using the bones. ****. Shikamaru did not even have time to create spikes, did not even have time to see the attacks, as he was instantly sent flying. ****Boom. Having demolished the tree, the guy flew a few more meters, leaving behind a long moat in the ground. Dust and debris of the tree flew to the side and Shikamaru finally stopped, making a dent in another tree. Sliding down, he could only laugh inwardly. Ha! I understand that. Even the Sharingan didn't help. There is also gunpowder in the flasks, the old man deserves respect. Lying in a heap of mud and debris of trees, Shikamaru, instead of being upset, smiled happily. His condition was quite stable. Raizeenn did not try to kill him, he just slightly damaged his ribs. But with the power of Shikatsumiyaku, that's not a problem at all. At the same time, Raizeenn looked at his leg in shock. She was bleeding terribly, and there was a sharp, thick white bone in the back of her thigh. Grimacing slightly, the old man pulled out the bone and grinned. Good kid, did not expect. Suddenly remembering something, Raizeenn instantly moved. Finding himself 2 meters from the lying and disheveled Shikamaru, Raizeenn exhaled with relief and limped slightly closer to him. Shikamaru smiled at that moment. Even despite his face smeared with mud, his Sharingan was still active and, being in this position, smeared and disheveled, his appearance seemed a little creepy, especially with his strange grin. Yeah, that's what I understand the power, and even without the Sharingan, great. Shikamaru pushed off the ground slightly, leaning his shoulders back and quickly got to his feet with a dexterous jump. At that moment, Raizeenn just came up and asked with a smile. Well, how? I see you are satisfied. Ah. Well, of course. Grinning, Shikamaru suddenly stopped smiling and said gloomily. Old man, you should see a doctor. Oh, exactly. Hitting his forehead, Raizeenn, laughing, raised his hand to the wound. And I think, what is so bad for me? As soon as he raised his hand, an unusual light green radiance instantly enveloped her. In just a few seconds, using the mystic palm, Raizeenn stopped all the bleeding. When he finished with himself, he brought his hand to Shikamaru's chest. There was a slight abrasion and slight bleeding, which was quickly stopped. That was my favorite shirt. Glancing at the torn clothes, Shikamaru just sighed sadly. It's worth walking naked with Shikatsumiyaku. Withdrawing his hand, Raizeenn nodded. That's all, your bones can only be envied, already completely restored the damage. Well, I'm not afraid of fractures. But if I lose a limb, the bones will not help here. Raizeenn chuckled. You wounded me well, but you're only 6 years old. I'm a bit old already. Raizeenn raised his head a little, sighing, and seriously asked, Shikamaru, as for your eyes. How to understand this? Smiling slightly, the guy said. I told my parents, and then I decided to tell you. He just took it and appeared, I don't know the reasons. When it came to the Sharingan, Raizeenn looked around, and then calmly said. This is all very unusual, you not only awakened the genome of the Kaguya clan, but also the Uchiha Dojutsu. How did this happen? How long ago? A year ago. The Hokage nodded and asked. What served this? I mean, under what circumstances did he awaken? Smiling slightly, Shikamaru replied. I understand what you mean. Uchiha usually awaken their eyes in special situations. That day, I got a little angry about one trouble, and then this happened to my eyes. In fact, Shikamaru certainly used the emotional outburst pill. Of course, he could not tell about it, everything about the system, no one should have known about it. So Shikamaru composed this story and even created some detailed evidence. But he doubted that anyone would particularly dig into all this. He did not want to arouse suspicion and say that the Sharingan appeared just like that. So I came up with a little story. As he thought, Raizeenn did not go into much detail, but simply nodded and asked. I see. When did the second tomo appear? Yesterday. Shikamaru smiled slightly. Of course he lied. In fact, there were two tomo at once, there was no point in telling Raizeenn about it. He has already been designated a genius, and a genius capable of immediately awakening the Sharingan with 2 volumes in 6 years is even more unique. And he is not from Uchiha, so this is too much. In principle, it would not hurt, but Shikamaru decided to hide it. Even his parents did not know about the 2 tomo, he also told them about the Sharingan quite recently. When Shikamaru replied, Raizeenn chuckled. So that's why you decided to challenge me now, thought there was a chance. Not really, but my father insisted that I show you this. Yes, and I myself understand that it was better to tell you, in order to avoid various problems with some individuals in the village. Slightly screwing up his eyes, Raizeenn asked. You mean someone specific? Shikamaru replied with a shrug. Who knows? But you can count on me, old man, I'm the least Shinobi. I just don't really want to experiment or brainwash. I see you already know a lot. With a drawn-out sigh, Raizeenn added. Since you know some things, you should understand that you should control yourself, at least until you become Knin. It won't take much time with your talent. Keep the Sharingan in the shadows. I'm sure Shikaku warned you. But, I also warn you, be careful with Shikamaru. You are an important talent of the village and I really hope in you. With your mind, you must understand some of the things happening in the village, especially with the whole clan, for whom these eyes mean a lot. At the Hokage's words, Shikamaru nodded gravely. I understand, the elder. Okay, smiling, the Hokage immediately asked. Soon admission to the academy. What do you think about this? Perhaps. I haven't decided yet, I need more time to think. About this, Shikamaru certainly had a plan, but now was not the right time. So he immediately decided to translate the topic. By the way, I wanted to ask you something else. The old man waved his hand, calling the guy to follow him, and then, limping slightly, began to leave the forest. Shikamaru quickly followed him and continued speaking. It's about the techniques, I studied everything in the clan and everything in the library. But there is nothing higher than E rank, just a couple of weak D rank techniques, like body blinking. So I wanted to ask. Raizeenn smiled and interrupted. Don't worry, I have a couple of scrolls for you. There are enough techniques for the genin in the archive, although you are not a Shinobi yet, but I can make exceptions, you had a good fight. Of course, your eyes shocked me. I did not expect to see something like that in my old age. Smiling slightly, Shikamaru was pleased. He was counting on something like that. Not only fight an experienced shinobi, but also get techniques, even if they are of low rank. Of course, the techniques could be bought in the scroll store, but first it was worth getting free ones, and only then decide something with others. The two walked to the Hokage residence for a short time and communicated more openly. Raizeenn probably still couldn't get away from the surprise of the Sharingan, so he didn't ask particularly difficult questions. When the Hokage returned to his residence, Shikamaru waved goodbye to him and left immediately. Raizeenn, in turn, looked after him and muttered softly, "I hope these eyes will not bring him a curse. If only the Uchiha did not find out, they have so recently problems." Sighing heavily, the Hokage turned around and returned to the residence. At the same time, Shikamaru slowly walked home and thought, "Home, everything went well, it makes me happy. The academy really is soon, let's see how it goes. I also have a couple of thoughts on this assignment, of course, it all depends on the old man. If everything goes as it should, then I will get what I wanted. Then finally it will be possible to start gaining new power." With a smile, Shikamaru straightened his collar and disappeared, leaving behind a couple of leaves circling in the wind. Coming back to the events at the Ninja Academy. "Shikamaru, what have you decided? I've already seen your skills, I'm afraid you have nothing to learn at the academy." When asked by the Hokage, Shikamaru immediately replied, "Well, my skills are really a little better than kids my age. But if I don't study, how can I make friends? Besides, I am the heir to my clan." Shikamaru said calmly, looking at his father. "I have to be part of the Ino Shikacho team. Even if I am stronger than them at the moment, this is the tradition of my clan, and as a future head, I must observe them out of respect for my ancestors." At Shikamaru's words, Shikaku smiled contentedly, as did Raizeenn. He also hoped for such an answer. Although he appreciated his abilities, he also believed that strength was not always the main thing. For Shinobi, comrades are just as important, but where if not in the academy to get these comrades? Raizeenn was a Sarutobi himself, and although his students were not Ino Shikacho, he also knew about their relationship. Therefore, I agreed with the guy's words, some traditions should be observed. With a pretty smile, Raizeenn said, "If you say so, then so be it. You are only 6 years old, at this age you should make friends, not think about training. Now are quiet times, no wars, children should stay as children longer." Sighing, Raizeenn turned to Director Tenzo and said, "Let the guy learn a little, at least a year or two, and then we'll see." After the Hokage's words, the headmaster nodded, and then Shikamaru suddenly spoke up. "Old man, I wanted to ask you something else." Shikaku immediately sighed in displeasure. "Shikamaru, no matter how much you say, don't call Lord Hokage that." Raizeenn smiled and waved his hand. "Nothing." "What did you want to ask, Shikamaru?" "This concerns the rank of genin. I would like to become one now, even if not quite officially, and get a protector, but at the same time study at the academy." The old man scratched his chin thoughtfully, and the director and father looked at the young man strangely. "Why do you need this, Shikamaru?" Shikaku asked in surprise. The guy chuckled. "I just wanted to become the youngest genin and graduate from the academy immediately after joining, not a bad achievement, right?" "Ha!" Shikaku smiled slightly and shook his head, while Raizeenn nodded. "If you so want it, then I can well confer upon you the title of genin. As for the academy, You have already, in principle, passed all the exams and can be released. If you want to remain an unofficial student, then why not? But I have one condition. What is the condition? The young man asked with interest. The Hokage replied with a strange grin. It's simple, in return you will help me in the residence. I could use an assistant like you. I've been thinking about this for a long time, so decide. When Shikamaru heard this condition, he gave the Hokage an odd look. Assistant, yes. Why is he suddenly? The old man was definitely up to something. Although Shikamaru had different thoughts on this, there was nothing wrong with that. Where, if not the Hokage, is the safest place in the village? Deciding on this, the guy nodded. I agree. Well, okay. Raizeenn got up with a slight smile and said, when you finish at the academy, come to me. The director also stood up and bowed to the departing Hokage. Shikaku followed and patted Shikamaru on the shoulder. Good luck, son. Oh, and I really hope that you will not exploit anyone here. Do you understand what I mean? Remembering a funny conversation with his father about how Shikamaru made the children earn money, Shikamaru grinned wryly and nodded. I understand, father. Well, okay. The man smiled and left the office with the Hokage. When only Director Tenzu and Shikamaru were left in the room, the guy bowed slightly. I'll go. Good luck, guy. If anything, my doors are always open. Clearing his throat, the old man began to collect papers, and Shikamaru quickly left. As soon as the guy left the office, he immediately folded the hand seal and, after a quiet pop, disappeared into thin air. At the same time, in the courtyard of the academy, not far from the ninja academy, in the shade of a small tree, sat a dark-haired guy with a cigarette slightly smoking in his teeth. He read a book with an uncomplicated title, Disappeared Clans, and turned the pages from time to time, blowing thick smoke from his mouth. Of course, this guy was Shikamaru. More precisely, his real body, not a shadow clone. Lately he has started to enjoy using them. They help in many matters, and you can relax yourself. All he was capable of so far was just one such clone. These guys turned out to be quite difficult to maintain. The problem was the amount of chakra. If you create a clone with an insufficient amount of it, it can result in quick fatigue. It's like losing a heap of chakra in one moment, very problematic and unpleasant. Even to some extent comparable to rapid blood loss. So Shikamaru no longer used this technique after one unpleasant incident where he almost fainted. But now that he had enough chakra, he enjoyed using clones. Over the past 2 years, the calm atmosphere of the hidden village has already completely penetrated his body and mind. He loved silence in the past, but here everything was much more pleasant. The pure scent of nature markedly improved the mood. So sitting in the shade has become a common thing for the guy outside of training. Although, when the opportunity arose, he again returned to the old habit and liked to light a cigarette. But he was not particularly eager to show himself to his parents. It will be difficult to explain, and he was too lazy. Smoking was no longer a physical habit, but rather passed along with him in his soul into this world. Slowly turning the pages, Shikamaru's gaze sometimes paused thoughtfully. Reading about the disappeared clans was not particularly interesting, but rather important for the overall development. Many clans have disappeared in Konoha, and there is almost no information about those that he has already learned. The Konoha library didn't seem as big as it used to. At some point in his reading, Shikamaru suddenly looked up from the book and smiled. Not bad, so we managed to agree with the Hokage. Although, the work of an assistant raises questions. ************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************************ familiar voice in his head. Completed task. Graduate. Graduate from the Ninja Academy and become a genin. Reward 5,000 points, a C-class vehicle scroll. Hidden reward, 2,000 points, 3 techniques from a random clan, a random pill. Not bad, albeit unofficially, but I finished it as a genin. This was exactly what was counted on. Noticing the awards, Shikamaru smiled with satisfaction. A hidden reward was given for quick completion, but probably slightly reduced due to the fact that Shikamaru did not actually graduate from the academy, but was still in it. He could not do this now, he had a lot in plans, and becoming a ninja was not particularly interesting now. So I had to find such a loophole. He kind of finished, but at the same time, not quite. Having quickly looked through the awards, the guy immediately checked the new tasks. But, unfortunately, they were not. Probably, there was no task to become Knin. But it was also reasonable, after all, there was a task to become Knin, so why another task to become Knin? The system did not really focus on the ranks, perhaps because Shikamaru could well not become Knin or Jnin, but the focus was definitely on strength. It was just that the assignment to the academy was an important component, and becoming genin was just a side goal and logical, because genin becomes after the academy. Instantly counting the new points, Shikamaru is content to smile. Not bad, the fun will start soon. 7,000 extra points will help a lot, especially now that Shikamaru has amassed nearly 20,000. Only 2 years have passed, and he has already managed to complete several tasks. Unique. Awaken Dojutsu. Reward, 10,000 points, a random awakened Dojutsu technique. This task was completed immediately after receiving the Sharingan. To get it, I had to buy a special pill. Because it was impossible otherwise. As Shikamaru thought, he failed to create a situation for the awakening of these eyes on purpose. He tried to jump off a cliff and communicate with a poisonous snake, but the fear was probably ineffective. He didn't really understand the principle of awakening this dojutsu. In the Konoha library there was little said about it. Recalling some moments from the manga, Shikamaru, of course, understood that the awakening of these eyes was somehow connected with relatives and worries for them, well, close friends too. Simply put, only emotions from loved ones somehow affect the Uchiha's brain, giving rise to a special chakra. But, in the case of Shikamaru, it was almost impossible. Although he established relations with his family, they were like close relatives to him, but not parents. It is too difficult to love completely strangers as parents, even if they care about you. Yes, and Shikamaru had a difficult story with his own father. Only years later did he fall in love with him as a father, and it was almost impossible to recognize someone else as a new father. Although, perhaps even such a connection could affect the eyes. Still, to some extent, he became attached to the new parents and certainly had respect and a sense of gratitude for them. Even so, he didn't know what to do to awaken the power of the Sharingan. It was impossible to harm them with our own hands for the sake of strength. In his opinion, it was definitely not worth it, especially in a situation where he could easily buy a pill and not worry about all this. He did not thirst for strength so much that he could sink so much and harm his loved ones. Probably, even among the Uchiha, there were only a few capable of doing this. As for the purchased tablet, it was a very unpleasant experience. The emotional outburst pill had rather painful effects. This is fear, pain, and joy at the same time. a real cocktail of all sorts of emotions that surged through the body. In addition, everything was amplified dozens of times and led Shikamaru to a real panic attack, which he had not experienced since childhood. A terrible experience, especially alone in the forest. All this led to the development of a special chakra and, of course, to the awakening of the Uchiha clan dojutsu. After the incident, Shikamaru almost immediately lost consciousness. Fortunately, this was a +2 to Mo. But, for more or less normal mastering of these eyes it took more than a month. In addition, after 2 years, Shikamaru never came close to the third Tomo. He did not quite understand the reason for the appearance of 2 at once, only attributing it to the strength of his pedigree. Obito and Itakai also kind of awakened 2 Tomo at once, so maybe it's also talent. Although, Obito was not that talented at the beginning of his journey. Of course, in the future he became even that monster with his Kamui. After completing the task for the first dojutsu, Shikamaru immediately received the second. But as it turned out, it was not in vain that he decided to risk it. This task was not for the second dojutsu, but immediately for mastering 3. The tasks became more and more difficult each time. The next task was just responsible for how Shikamaru received those 5,000 points of fate, for which he bought the pill. Without him, he would probably have to wait almost 6 months before completing another assignment. Full fusion. Live in the Shinobi world for 1 year and not be revealed as a reborn. Reward 5,000 points, weak pedigree. This building was quite interesting, or rather interesting was its award, and the execution itself was, of course, very simple. Not being revealed, this is perhaps the easiest thing Shikamaru faced. His parents completely accepted him, because he was just a child, and the others in the villages did not even know him at all, so it was not difficult to merge into this world. The pedigree is rewarded, it was something new for the guy, but he was naturally happy with such a free gift. In Yuzuka, 50% strength, upgrades of all senses +5 speed. Improved genome, absent. Although the pedigree of these dog lovers was not particularly strong, it had undeniable advantages in tracking or searching. Shikamaru's sense of smell and hearing increased markedly, and his taste buds sharpened. But of course, the scent was the strongest, you can't argue here. And for every 10% in the strength of the pedigree, an additional indicator to speed is quite a good reward. Moreover, it is completely free and without any particular difficulties. The next task was also very remarkable. Shikamaru managed to complete it about a year ago, almost immediately after the Sharingan awakened. The power of Genin. Reach 200 chakra volume, 80 protection and strength, 70 speed. Master 2 E-rank techniques. Reward, 5,000 points, a scroll of 3D techniques. Special reward, 2,000 points, a scroll of 3C techniques from a random village. The difficulty was in the chakra, he constantly lacked it, especially at the beginning of the path. He received strong bloodlines and even increased the potential of his body through the difficult assimilation of these bloodlines. He was certainly able to raise endurance. But the chakra was still not enough, it may have been a little more than that of a simple 4-year-old, but not enough for something worthwhile, such as for the shadow cloning technique, for example. Things are much better now. It took him a little over a year to finally reach 200 in volume. Although, he rather waited for her to grow up, just exercising. This was the only way he knew how to increase volume. Fortunately, she grew up and it made me happy. But reaching that level before the age of 6, he reached the hidden conditions and received additional points and additional scrolls of already worthy C-rank techniques. Of course, he had not yet collected awards. He wanted to wait until he entered the academy, and only then decide. Everything he did before was just training and learning about the world. Well, I also built my own business a little. Remembering this, Shikamaru quickly folded up a couple of seals, and at the same instant, after a soft pop, a similar copy appeared from a white cloud. The same black hair, clothes. When the clone appeared, he snorted in displeasure. Work again. Having folded several seals, after a strange sound, the shape of the shadow clone changed. It was already a tall, white-haired, curly-haired man with a cheerful smile. He wore a chef's hat and a white apron with a red inscription, Korachi Restaurant. Frowning at his grinning original, the clone sighed. Maybe at least give me a smoke. Here. The clone slowly grabbed the outstretched cigarette and bent down slightly. Shikamaru held out a lighted lighter. After lighting a cigarette, the clone exhaled smoke and slowly began to leave with a wave of his hand. Shikamaru just smiled. Nothing, money won't earn itself. It was just about time to open the restaurant, so Shikamaru naturally sent a clone to work. Over a year ago, he opened his own restaurant in the city center. It was small but quite popular for its special dishes that Shikamaru invented. The profit was good, so he sometimes remembered something from the past and tried to cook it. Fortunately, in the past, he managed to taste a lot of food, and some ingredients in this world were enough. Some story came out of the restaurants. Thanks to his past earnings, Shikamaru already had some capital, but it would still not be enough to open his own enterprise. And he did not count on this at all. In those days, he did not know the techniques of changing appearance, so it was probably impossible to start a business at his age. But, thanks to some problems, everything changed. 2 years ago, a couple of months after the incident with several children, Shikamaru raised a lot of money. But, this method of earning did not work for long. Although his subordinates worked conscientiously, the villagers did not manage to fool for a long time. It just so happened that some of the children had ninjas in their parents and some suspected something. Of course, this was expected. Ultimately, the Shinobi could go to Shikamaru, so he had to get out of it very quickly. Of course, the suckers he worked with were not particularly happy with this outcome, yet they had to do the dirty work and they counted on their reward. But Shikamaru didn't really care about it, a couple of skirmishes and fights, and it ended up fine in the end. He was not involved in charity work, he had already taught them a rather important lesson. But in the end, it was not possible to completely get rid of the problems. For obvious reasons, some Shinobi managed to figure out who was behind this scheme. Shikamaru couldn't get rid of the witnesses, so that was to be expected. Fortunately, he already knew that this was likely to happen. He ran into a couple of kids from the academy, so he knew their parents might very well be ninjas. But even so, Shikamaru was not particularly afraid of future problems. He already knew it would be difficult to blame a 4-year-old child, especially the son of the village's important jonin. The voice of a simple knin against the head of an entire clan would not have decided anything at all. Even if punishment follows, it certainly won't be particularly scary. How can you punish an ordinary child? Shikamaru could well tell some childish nonsense and justify himself. Therefore, the case did not flare up much. In the end, Shikaku found out everything, and although the case was quickly resolved, Shikamaru was still slightly hurt. Although, he would not call it that. More likely a small nuisance, no more. Shikaku decided not to tell Yoshino what had happened, more for his own sake rather than his son. Who knows who she's going to blame in the end. So Shikamaru got off with a simple reprimand and a rather difficult training. Although, the reprimand was mixed with praise, but the training did not scare him at all, even if he had to endure several hours of sparring with his father. Such Shikamaru was even really glad. Since then, the father's attitude towards his son has slightly changed. Now Shikaku asks much more questions and is much more interested in the boy's affairs. Well, Shikamaru himself was not particularly opposed, everything turned out in the best possible way. Still, thanks to his father, he managed to learn a couple of clan techniques, so it even played into his hands. Well, as for the business, he should also thank Shikaku here. Although he was a little dissatisfied with such an excessive independence of his son, he still decided not to insist that he take money from him. But he couldn't let him get into trouble again, so he offered an alternative. A completely legal way of earning money at the discretion of Shikamaru. Maybe it was a test, but the guy didn't care much, there weren't many options and Shikamaru. Although there was money, it was not enough for something serious. Shikaku could provide a certain amount for temporary use, which was fine with Shikamaru. So, having formed with his father, he decided to open a small restaurant. The situation was quite funny, a 4-year-old guy starts his own business. Somewhere in another world, this would only cause laughter. Yes, even in the ninja world, this would be difficult to accept, so although Shikamaru was responsible for everything, Shikaku simply covered him up and was listed as the owner. Otherwise, he did not interfere in the affairs of his son. After this incident, Shikamaru's respect for his father grew even more. At first, I had to hire a couple of cooks, and already when Shikamaru mastered shadow cloning, hands were added. Besides, the clone does not need to pay, which is an additional benefit. In any case, the business brought in income, and quite sufficient. A couple of months ago, Shikamaru closed the debt to his father and was now fully working for himself. Perhaps in a year or two it will be possible to expand. Although I have better ideas, exhaling smoke, Shikamaru chuckled a little and closed the book. Earnings were important, but he wasn't really hoping for a restaurant. He was just like a little side job in the village. When he can leave the village, there will be tons of new ways to get some money. Although, as a way to launder money, it will do. Shikamaru brushed aside his thoughts, slowly stood up, and then opened another task. Knin power. Reach 1000 chakra volume, 150 strength and speed, 200 stamina. Minimum chakra control is 100. Learn at least 3 C-rank techniques. When Shikamaru completed the Genin Power quest, he naturally received a new one, Knin Power. Perhaps it was a new difficult path, he remembered well how long it took to reach his current chakra level, so it would take at least a couple of years for Shikamaru to accumulate enough. But, this is only if he just trains. Chakra growth is gradually slowing down, Shikamaru had noticed this long ago. If you judge correctly, then by the age of 10, the growth of the chakra volume will slow down very much due to age. So even if Shikamaru is training now, it doesn't affect the volume that much, just a little bit. If the chakra had been increasing all his life, it would be too easy. By about the age of 12, the ninja reaches its limits in volume thanks to genetics, and then everything depends on him. Shikamaru was quite confident that he could reach Knin's level in 2 years, maybe less. He counted on a quick increase in strength and new bloodlines. He specially saved up points for a good and pleasant pumping. To become a Knin in 2 years is, of course, quite fast, and besides, at 8 years old it is something very rare and difficult. But, with a system and so many pedigrees, it should be logical. If he could not even do that, it would be too strange. Just with all this strength, Shikamaru felt bored. He wanted to quickly deal with the academy. But at the same time, he knew that it was worth being patient and perhaps wait for the canon. Long and boring, but he was ready to endure. Still, he was not going to give up his knowledge of the original history. If he leaves the academy earlier, it could cause problems in this regard. In addition, he is not quite officially at the academy. Technically he is already genin, and if he asks well enough, then perhaps the Hokage will give him some task. Maybe something small that Shikamaru can of course use and walk outside the village. If so, he can ease the boredom a little. Looking around, Shikamaru dropped and put out his cigarette, and then slowly trudged to the academy, thinking about some things. Actually, as always. Soon it will be possible to start pumping. I have completed enough tasks, it would be time to buy something worthwhile. Entering the building, Shikamaru immediately went to his class. Even after gaining 2 bloodlines, Shikamaru still lagged behind the Knin, although he was noticeably superior to the genin. Although, in Taijutsu, perhaps he could even fight a weak Knin using Shikatsu-myaku and Sharingan. But he wanted to be sure of his exit into the world. And for the next couple of years, it was simply necessary to wait in order to strengthen strength. Crawling on the rampage at his age is still stupid. There will still be opportunities and more. So for now, it was worth meeting new people and starting a new pumping. Since it's time for the academy, the Uchiha massacre is already close. If you think so, there are absolutely no assignments for this. The system ignored the situation, even got the route assignment, but nothing about the Uchiha. In any case, I would not mind getting, though not their eyes, but the brain for sure. While Shikamaru was thinking about the best way to get a fresh Uchiha body, he did not even notice how he went to the right office. Looking bored at the door, the guy sighed. Well, I'll hope that everything goes well. Well, I could well miss almost all of the classes, so it's not that bad. Regarding the Uchiha. I remember in the northeast of the village, right behind the barrier, there is a rather familiar place. It seems like this is where Shisui will end his journey. Well, maybe this is a chance. With a little grin, Shikamaru finally brushed aside his thoughts and opened the classroom door with a satisfied grin. At the same time, Iruka was still calling the names of the students. So, then. Sakura-ha. As soon as the door opened, Iruka was distracted. The pink-haired girl who had already risen from her seat, like the whole class, turned her gaze towards the entrance. Yo! Shikamaru waved his hand and smiled at the whole class, then bowed to the teacher. Hello, Iruka-sensei, sorry for being late. When Kji saw his friend, he immediately breathed out in relief. Well, finally. And then waved to Shikamaru. The teacher examined the new one and held out in surprise. And you? Shikamaru, Shikamaru Nara. Ah, son of Shikaku-senpai. Come in, we're almost done. The guy nodded briefly and walked slowly to the left of the classroom, right in the direction of the waving Kji. 2 interesting guys were sitting next to the fat man. Who is this here? Kibara Inuzuka, Naruto Uzumaki. This fox doesn't look good. Looks like he still remembers our last meeting. With a slight smile, Shikamaru noticed a smiling Ino out of the corner of his eye. Smiling back at her, the guy quickly looked around the class. Many familiar faces, Sasuke, Hinata, and of course Sakura. The girl was clearly striking as she was still standing. And her large forehead, along with her bright pink hair, was quite noticeable. Anyway, Sakura was pretty cute. Shikamaru certainly did not see any problems with her forehead, although he stared at him thoughtfully. When the girl caught the guy's gaze, he smiled slightly and winked at her. Sakura blinked in confusion and Shikamaru finally sat down calmly. Youth. Making himself comfortable, Shikamaru thought again as Iruka continued the roll call. If you think so, I only met 3 of my class. Kji came first, and then Ino. Yes, it was a fun day. 2 months ago, Konoha. For Shikamaru, who rose in the morning, it was quite an ordinary day. He was going to devote himself to training again and read about the Senju clan. Their disappearance was not specifically explained in the manga, but upon arriving in this world, Shikamaru naturally became interested in all of this. The disappearance of such a clan was definitely not an easy matter. He already had some guesses about the reasons for their disappearance, but there was no evidence. But after reading, he seemed to understand everything and also realized the reason for the rarity of the tree's genome. First of all the Senju were not always related by blood, they were not even a clan, but rather a grouping consisting of many different clans, subordinate to the leader, who belonged to the Senju bloodline. Unlike the same Uchiha, who are just a pure representative of the real clan. They did not mix their blood with anyone and always tried to keep the Sharingan only for themselves. Senju, on the contrary, they simply united with other clans and thus increased their strength. Simply put, Senju mixed with others, and these others mixed with them. What happened in the end? That's right, there are simply no pureblood representatives of the clan left. Hashirama was probably the last and it was on him that the inheritance of the tree genome ended. The same Tobirama did not own it, so there is a very high probability that they had different mothers. This could explain a lot. The same Uchiha all Poles dark-haired and dark-eyed. The diluted blood may well have weakened Senju's genes, and therefore he was unable to awaken Mokuton. From all this it follows that the main branch of the Senju was a kind of dynasty, which nevertheless disappeared, simply due to the mixing of blood. Well, and Tsunade, although the granddaughter of the first, but in the end, she is still a half-breed. The truth is a bit special due to the ancestry of Uzumaki and Senju. Unlike the Uchiha, Senju did not breed using relatives, so they lost the power of Mokuton. The same Uchiha, thanks to internal reproduction, were able to maintain the strength of their eyes. In general, many clans such as Sarutobi, Nara, Akimichi and others. Even in the distant past, they joined the Senju banner. This is very reminiscent of some of the factions in the past world of Shikamaru, which rose under the banner of a noble family. Now, the main branch of Senju has disappeared, and as such the banner has been replaced by Konoha. So this clan, in fact, did not disappear, just those that remained are not pureblood. Of course, they have a chance to awaken the power of Mokuton, but much less than a pureblood heir like Hashirama. Well as the struggle for power could well have taken away some of the representatives of this clan. Yet Senju can be called the ruling family to some extent. To all this, it is also worth adding constant wars, as a result of which many of the remaining even half-breeds of the clan ceased to exist. So what may have remained of the once great family, but Senju's banner simply changed to Konoha, and the clan disappeared into the village. It's a pity there are no blood inheritance records or any family tree here. The same old man third may well even be a relative of the first. The mixing of blood is so. After taking a few notes in his notebook, Shikamaru finally got dressed and left the room. After finishing breakfast and washing up, the guy quickly jogged and went to meet Kji. After that incident with Shikatsumiyaku, Kji regained consciousness for a couple of days, and then seemed to be as good as new. Shikamaru didn't really care about it and didn't ask any questions. Once a friend has come to his senses, then there is no need for unnecessary chatter. Kji has trained quite hard since then and has shown himself well in sparring. Walking slowly down the street, Shikamaru thought a little. Okay, today we should leave the shurikens, I'm more interested in the ricochet trajectory. It looked pretty impressive in the anime. If everything is calculated correctly, then maybe I will succeed. Perhaps it would be possible to use the Sharingan, but I'm afraid it won't work. As long as the Uchiha live, I'll be more careful with that. Quickly reaching Kji's home, the two immediately went to one of the training grounds near the Forest of Death. They often trained there. The clans of friends were neighboring, and the Forest of Death was a stone's throw. And there was almost always no one there, so it was much calmer to train. But this time it was completely different. This time there were already some at the training ground. As the two drew closer, Kji sighed in displeasure. Yeah, it looks like someone took our place. There are a couple more polygons here, so don't be nervous, besides. Glancing at the trio again, Shikamaru muttered in surprise. It's... What? Do you know them? Kji asked interestedly. After scratching behind his ear, Shikamaru nodded. Yes, a little. Squinting, Shikamaru watched the trio. The first was a man. Shikamaru recognized him immediately. Blonde hair in a ponytail, green eyes and a leaf protector on the forehead. The man was also distinguished by his red cloak, over Jonin's vest. Inoichi Yamanaka, someone, and his Shikamaru did not expect to meet here. Yet as far as he knew, this Shinobi had a rather important job of controlling and maintaining the sensitive barrier. Although, after listening a little, the guy realized that he was not here for long. Listen to Avi, show her the basics, okay? Inoichi turned to the blonde young girl on his right hand. The girl was a little shorter than the man, and also much younger. She looked about 17 years old, no more. She wore a rather unusual outfit. It was a black kimono with a yellow sash and a red sash tied around the top. The Kunoichi's face was very impressive, bright blue eyes, a slightly upturned nose and small blush on her cheeks made her very cute. On top of all this, even her loose outfit could not hide the girl's noticeable shape. Her hair was tied in a ponytail and adorned with a couple of pretty flowers. She had a calm smile on her face as she quietly listened to Inoichi's instructions. Shikamaru even involuntarily gazed at such beauty. Damn, how long have I had a woman? I forgot how attractive girls in this world can be. Oh, brother, this lady is nothing at all. Kji nodded contentedly. Looking at his friend, Shikamaru smiled. Maybe so, only she is an experienced ninja, so our chances are slim. Ha, as if we had them anyway. Kji laughed, attracting the talking three. This time, Shikamaru did notice the girl's face, which was still turned to the side. So you are what Ino Yamanaka, smiling at the little blonde, Shikamaru immediately appreciated her appearance. The girl was cute. Well, she was still a child, so Shikamaru wasn't too upset. Just a pretty girl with green eyes and short white hair that falls down to her shoulders. She looked like an ordinary mischievous child. Although, Shikamaru certainly understood that very soon this girl would grow into a charming beauty. Moreover, this beauty will be in his team. This could not bring a smile on the guy's face. He may have been a 5-year-old, but inside he was still a grown man as well. Although, with the fate of the child, he resigned himself and one might even say got used to the role, as if he had rejuvenated. When Inoichi noticed 2 guys, he immediately smiled and waved at them. Shikamaru, Kji. Hello, Inoichi-san. Shikamaru waved his hand back, and Kji just repeated after another. Shikamaru only saw Inoichi a couple of times when he visited his father, and Kji just caught a glimpse of him with his father. In the 3 clans, it was no secret about Ino Shikacho, but the parents tried not to start talking about it. Maybe they wanted to do a surprise or something. But of course Shikamaru had already talked about it with his father, and then he told Kji. Wait, brother, is this the same girl who will be with us on the team? Kji asked in surprise. It finally dawned on him when he heard Inoichi's name. Shikamaru nodded briefly and walked slowly towards Ino. Just at that moment, Inoichi asked. You 2 also came to practice? Yes, we're here every day, Kji replied calmly. Shikamaru was looking at Ino with an appraising look. The girl was half a head shorter than Shikamaru and watched the boys walking in her direction with curiosity. Turning to her father, Ino asked. Dad, who are they? Do you know them? Well, they are the children of my close friends. I really hope that you get along. Well, I think it's time to go. Avi, look after her, and the guys too, you never know. With a wave of his hand, Inoichi smiled at the guys who had already approached, and then simply disappeared into a cloud of smoke. When the man disappeared, Kji immediately exclaimed. Ha brother, when will you teach me this technique? It's so cool. Frowning at his friend, Shikamaru replied. I told you, first learn to walk on water, and then we'll talk. Still silent before, Ino sharply interrupted the conversation. Walk on water. Can you walk on water? Only he. Kji replied with a sigh, nodding towards his friend, I fall after the first meter. Oh, maybe it's all about your weight. Ino asked with a cheerful smile. Shikamaru chuckled wryly as he watched Kji's reaction out of the corner of his eye. The fat man just opened his mouth, and then gritted his teeth and, turning to Shikamaru, growled. Gah! Brother, you see what is happening. Now, if I had explained it better, this would not have happened. Ha ha ha, what have I got to do with it? Do you think it was easy for me? Isn't it? At that moment, Ino spoke again. Boys, stop fighting, let's practice together. Ha, if with this beautiful older sister, then I do not mind. Kji held out with a smile, looking at the girl smiling aside. Wow, how long have you become so confident with women, my brother? It's a success. Shikamaru said with a little chuckle. Well, how did you say there? Confidence is also power, isn't it? Shaking his head with a smile, Shikamaru finally began to realize his influence on this fat man. If this continues, then Kji will definitely change. Smiling at Ino, Shikamaru asked. Maybe let's get acquainted first. Oh, right. I'm Ino Yamanaka, and you? Well, I'm Shikamaru Nara, and this is my friend, Kji Akimichi. The fat man nodded contentedly and turned to the tall girl. What is your name? When Kji spoke to Avi, the girl smiled slightly. I'm Avi, glad to meet you. Kji's eyes sparkled even more, to which Shikamaru chuckled. This guy, he absolutely does not know how to hide his emotions, and how long has he become like this? Although, we must admit, this girl is impressive. Although it stands out, it is actually impossible to read. The smile never left her face, and she did not show any emotions at all. Such calmness and serenity in the gaze. At that moment, Ino spoke up. Older sister Avi is my teacher. Isn't she beautiful? Aha! Chaoji nodded without taking his eyes off. Shikamaru smiled and lightly touched Ino's shoulder. I am sure you will grow up to be no less beautiful. Ha! Ino blushed slightly, to which Shikamaru smiled and walked slowly towards several targets. Since training is worth training. Kji finally caught himself and shouted. Hey Shikamaru, wait for me. Come on quickly. Ino looked thoughtfully at Shikamaru's back, while watching from the side. Avi chuckled. What a curious guy. Ino turned around and asked with interest. Curious? Yes. With a little smile, Avi said. He's your age, just. He's definitely strong. Yes. And how did you get it? Stretching out her hand, Avi stroked Ino's head. Never mind, we'd better start training. Soon you will go to the academy. If you do not want to lag behind others, then train. Well, okay. Ino sighed. Avi, on the other hand, glanced at Shikamaru again and thought. So many abrasions, even the bandages can't hide them, how does he train? Shikamaru did not have his fingers hidden, as well as elbows, but he also trained them. Sometimes he practiced blows with his palms, did push-ups on his fingers and practiced blows with the same fingers. So the corns and multiple abrasions were natural. It's just that usually only very observant people pay attention to this, well, or Shinobi who study theory well. Walking away, Shikamaru clapped his hands and turned to Kji. Okay, use whatever you can, then it's my turn. Got it? Kji nodded and took out his shurikens. Shikamaru stepped back and waved his hand to signal. Let's start. Shouting, Kji threw 3 shurikens at Shikamaru and instantly jumped off the ground. Although the guy was a little overweight, this did not greatly affect his speed. As soon as the shurikens were a few meters from Shikamaru, he quickly pulled out his own and threw them at flying targets. Tick asterisk. Damn. Mentally cursing, Shikamaru jumped to the side. Only one hit the target, the rest of the shurikens continued their flight. To hit flying targets is much more difficult than it seems, especially without the Sharingan. But Shikamaru tried anyway. Left, turning around, the guy threw his fist to Kji who arrived in time. He grimaced and dodged kicked. With a slight movement of his hand, Shikamaru blocked his leg, and then sharply pushed the fat man with his shoulder. A simple attack, but Kji was knocked out of balance, taking advantage of the moment Shikamaru instantly grabbed a kunai and put his lying friend to the throat. Ha, here it is again. Kji snorted in displeasure, rolling his eyes. Shikamaru chuckled and quickly removed the kunai, then held out his hand to his friend. Not bad already, although I wouldn't even have to move, the shurikens wouldn't hit anyway. You never learned how to throw them. Kji scratched the back of his head and smiled brightly. Well, I wanted to study yesterday, but it just so happened that my dad called me to the barbecue, so. No wonder you lose every time. Ha, you know what, everyone can beat a child, but you. When Kji noticed Ino practicing punches, his gaze flashed, you know what brother, why don't you fight that cute girl, Millimeter? If, of course, you are not afraid. After his friend's words, Shikamaru narrowed his eyes and coldly asked. What did you mumble at the end? Hey, I didn't say anything. Well, of course, I won't tell you anything about today's ramen either. Ha! I'm sorry brother, I'm sure you can do it easily. What can she do, just an ordinary girl? Shikamaru shook his head chuckling. Enough already. I do not mind fighting her, it's much better than wasting time with such a lazy person. Hey, I'm not lazy. It's just that today is not my day. Of course. With a wave of his hand, Shikamaru quickly gathered up his shurikens and then walked over to Kji. Learn to throw, if I like it, we'll go to the barbecue tomorrow. Kji's face changed dramatically. Ha! Seriously? No problem. Before Shikamaru even finished speaking, Kji began throwing shuriken. Ha ha ha! For meat, I'm ready to go beyond what is possible. Shouting, the guy did not even aim and began to throw shurikens. In fact, Shikamaru simply had to resort to such methods. Only food could motivate this fat man. If he is not motivated, then he will continue to be lazy, which Shikamaru could not allow. Although he didn't bet much on Ino Shikacho, he at least wanted a normal training partner. Now, Kji cannot hold out in battle for more than a few seconds, and even Shikamaru wasn't serious. Fortunately, Kji grew up, he even learned how to climb a tree, so he had potential. And the force of his blow was impressive, so a good shinobi should definitely come out of him. Especially if you continue to feed him. With a rather nod to his training friend, Shikamaru turned and walked slowly towards the training girls. Ino practiced list standard punches. This is a simple taijutsu style taught to children. According to Shikamaru, this style is practiced at the academy. In principle, although this is the basis, most of the shinobi in the village only own it. Is that rare taijutsu masters have their own style, as well as certain clans. Uchiha and Hyuga, for example, have their own style. This is understandable, because both of these clans own dojutsu. Thanks to their special eyes, they are able to perform what ordinary shinobi are not capable of. Shikamaru also practiced these basics. He received simple techniques from the main taijutsu scroll, and already a more complete version he received from his father and from the library. Still, Shikaku, although he does not often train his son, sometimes helps. So the library is sometimes a real salvation. The last time he had to ask his mother at all to mate with him. Perhaps thanks to her, he achieved his current success, because with Kji there is little that can be done. In addition, the guy did not want to spend points on techniques, because he had a Sharingan, and buying taijutsu for the owner of these eyes was as unreasonable as possible. Unless something very rare like the 8 heavenly gates. Shikamaru did not yet understand if they could be copied. But even if so, how can you copy the full release? So he was increasingly inclined to believe that one day he would still have to buy this technique. Approaching the girls, Shikamaru did not distract them, but simply decided to observe a little. He often watched various ninja trainings. For often it was genin, but sometimes even knin. Although, he was a little upset that he could not use the Sharingan for more detailed analysis. He was already able to copy a couple of his father's techniques, so he knew firsthand how useful these eyes were in observation. The Sharingan allows you to perfectly write any information into the brain. Literally everything that the owner of the activated eyes sees is impossible to forget. Even if there are thousands of techniques or a whole book of cooking recipes. True, for eye support, you need a lot of chakra. And walking with a constantly activated Sharingan is not as easy as it seems. Shikamaru trained these eyes about once a week if his father was at home, on other days he did not take risks. This was Shikaku's warning, which he fully agreed with. The anew hid well, and it's good if it's the anew Hokage, but if they come from the root, it will be dangerous. As long as the Uchiha exists, it is impossible to use these eyes openly in his current position. It was difficult to predict what they would do. Shikamaru read a lot about them, and this clan was famous for rather tough methods to preserve their eyes. The Uchiha personally hunted down the apostates and killed them. While it's hard to blame them for that, any clan would probably try to keep their secrets so special. But of course it is also worth knowing that a rigid hierarchy reigned in their clan, even worse than that of the Hyuga. There, the rules were set by the head and elders. All of their descendants could be said to be of higher rank than any other Uchiha, even if he awakened the Sharingan. Of course, awakening also gave an advantage. But if not, then without those eyes, we can say that the Uchiha is almost not Uchiha. Even the elders' children will not be very well treated if they could not awaken their eyes before the age of 16. Perhaps, in such situations, the Uchiha resorted to unpleasant measures. Fathers had to personally take responsibility and find a way to awaken the eyes of their own child. Although, how everything happens was not specifically described. And whether this was true was also unclear. Of course, Shikamaru didn't take everything that was written seriously. There are many rumors about the Uchiha, only a fool will believe in them. As for the evolution of the Sharingan, this was not even in the library. In any case, Shikamaru feared that these were not easy times for the village, and who knows what the Uchiha will throw out. Everyone was on pins and needles. Yes, and dance caused fears. Shikamaru remembered well how he insolently wanted to take Kakashi's Sharingan, as if he were his own. If he finds out about Shikamaru's power, and it can be very dangerous, who knows what tricks he uses to study him. So the guy decided to wait a little while copying techniques, but just used his normal vision. It was even interesting to watch the two girls. Still, Avi's beauty was amazing. Shikamaru was the first time he had ever seen anyone so beautiful. He often walked through the village, but no kunoichi he met was comparable to this blonde beauty. Shikamaru wondered why this girl was not shown in the manga. Although, if she was in anew just like Konohamaru's parents, then this could be explained. There was no talk of those either, but they existed and were quite alive to themselves. Staring at this adorable girl, Shikamaru tried to estimate her age. On the one hand, she looked like an adult, but on the other, she was definitely no more than 18. Besides, this is probably also an exaggerated age. He was more likely to lean towards 16, yet girls in this world grow up quickly. And judging by her body, she is really very young. Shikamaru smiled slightly at the slightly sweating Ino. She was so cute. He was already eager to see her adult version. She definitely had to become an incredible beauty. The training was pretty simple. Ino threw punches, and Avi straightened her arms and stance, and then nodded contentedly and sometimes complimented. Ino did quite well. It was a decent level for a beginner. But the way Avi demonstrated her movements was simply amazing. Shikamaru even involuntarily watched all her movements. It seemed that she was doing everything slowly, but in fact, her movements were, although smooth, but very fast. When she showed a blow to her young student, it was really impressive. She is at least Knin, besides, even here I can feel the force of her blows. She definitely trained for more than 1 year. Although she looks like a gentle girl, I'm afraid I'm not her rival. Of course, this is not even the maximum of her strength. Yes. I want to fight her. With a sparkle in his eyes, the guy finally came closer to the girls and asked. Maybe we can fight. Interrupting the workout, Ino turned around in surprise. With me? No, Shikamaru smiled slightly at Avi. With her? And? Seriously? Do you want to fight your little sister? Well. Ino's eyes sparkled and she turned her gaze sharply to Avi. The girl was also a little surprised, but then smiled and asked. Boy, are you sure? You certainly did well against your friend, but don't think that it will be so easy with me. Oh, no, of course, I will definitely lose, Shikamaru said with a grin, but I would still like to test my strength, if you don't mind. Avi's face flashed with doubt, but at that moment Ino tugged at her clothes and smiled. Sister, fight him. I want to see. Ah. Well, why not? Just, seriously looking at Shikamaru, Avi warned. If you get hurt, then don't blame me. Ho, I'll be gentle. Ha ha, these are my words. Laughing, Avi instantly moved to the side. Shikamaru barely followed her movements and involuntarily swallowed. Hell, I hope this doesn't turn into a beating. Without the bones, it won't be easy. Although, I can strengthen myself internally. Well, not a bad option either. Besides, there was no question of ninjutsu. Smiling, Shikamaru moved in a similar manner, instantly disappearing from his place. Appearing a few meters from Evie, the girl smiled slightly. Not bad, you're pretty fast. You are definitely the fastest little boy I've ever met. Ho! I wonder how many little boys have you met? Not very much. Stopping in mid-sentence, Avi noticed Shikamaru's strange grin and began to understand something. That's not what he meant, did he? These are facial expressions. What is this question in general? The blonde asked irritably. Shikamaru shrugged. A question is a question. By the way, Avi, can't I call you Avi? Without waiting for an answer, Shikamaru waved his hand. Well, good. I wanted to clarify something else. Avi was already beginning to regret having decided to fight this guy. Her first impression of him quickly changed, from being a hard-working youth to being an annoying jerk. What else? Avi asked displeased, completely ceasing to smile. Shikamaru's eyes sparkled, now he realized that she was not such a smiling girl and not as calm as she seemed. It was quite possible to piss her off. He wanted to force her to act, and perhaps to provoke her anger. If everything goes right, then the chances of winning will increase. In addition, he had another idea how to use this collision to his advantage. Well, I wanted to ask. If suddenly you lose, then how about becoming my partner? A partner? What do you mean? In the girl's voice one could already notice obvious irritation. Yes, nothing like that, just a sparring partner. I have no one to train with, and you are a strong ninja. Avi's face changed again, but restraining herself with displeasure replied. Why should I agree at all? Not only will you not be able to win, but even if you do, why should I do anything for you at all? Oh, but don't you love cute little boys? *PFF*. Ino chuckled and laughed, while Shikamaru stared innocently at Avi. The girl's eyebrows twitched, but she pulled herself together again. Calm down, he's just a small brat. A small and impudent brat, with perverted manners. I can't believe that there could be someone like that in the Nara clan. With a piercing glance at Shikamaru, Avi said loudly. Stop acting like that, you and I are not friends. I refuse to fight you until you apologize. Oh, was Avi scared? Are you afraid of hurting my pretty face? Shikamaru waved his hand with a mock sigh. I would happily apologize if you won. Brat. Do you think I'm some kind of little girl? Do you think I'm going to be so stupid? And stop calling me by name. The girl finally lost her temper. Glancing around her, Shikamaru scratched his beard and nodded in satisfaction. Well, I would give you no more than 16, so you're not that old. After these words, Ino laughed on the sidelines. He, Shikamaru, my sister is only 14, she's not that old. Shikamaru widened his eyes in amazement and stared at the girl's two perfect curves. Damn, she's only 14. Who's that old here? When Avi caught sight of Shikamaru's gaze, she involuntarily covered her chest. What are you allowing yourself, a boy? Hey, you're still a little girl yourself. Shikamaru waved his hand and sighed. So that's why you don't want to fight, you're just afraid that a genius like me will defeat you, right? Genius. Avi growled irritably, I'm one of the youngest knin in the clan, and are you a genius here? Shikamaru glanced around the girl's figure again out of the corner of his eye and chuckled. Yeah. You're not that bad. But then why are you afraid to fight? I'm not afraid. Why would I fight such an insolent guy? You insulted me. I haven't said a bad word to you, but that's how you behave. Shikamaru chuckled wryly. Maybe he really overdid it a bit and acted like a boy, but he had a plan, so he couldn't back down. Plus, it was fun to watch this reaction. Okay, I understand. You can only make excuses. First you came out and wanted to beat me, and now you are afraid of some small deal with a 6-year-old child. Is this what adults do? You insolent kid. Gritting her teeth, Avi stood up and said loudly. Okay. I'll beat you up and then don't you dare complain. Do you mean a deal? Well, if you win, I'll become your sparring partner. But if you lose, I not only demand an apology, but also, I wish that you no longer appear in my eyes. Oh, what's wrong with her? I didn't think she was that angry. I'm only 6 years old, why is she? Shaking his head, Shikamaru grinned and stood up. Then the deal is closed. But just to be clear. Swear by the will of fire that you will fulfill your terms of the deal. I swear. TTS. I swear. Let's start already. Smiling, Shikamaru instantly moved. Avi also started acting. In an instant, both clashed. Bang. Avi's leg was blocked by the young man's strong forearm, and then a series of fist attacks. Shikamaru's bones withstood her blows quite well. Even so, he was tense to the limit, the blows were very painful. This girl did not spare him at all, she thrashed him mercilessly, pouring out all her anger. Her speed was fast enough that Shikamaru didn't even have time to attack himself. At a certain moment, the blow of the girl fell right on the guy's ribs. This time he could not dodge. Heck. Bang. Having flown several meters, Shikamaru did not even have time to catch his breath, as Avi appeared nearby and attacked with a swing of her leg. Boom. The ground cracked slightly, but Shikamaru barely managed to escape using the swap. When the guy's body turned into a piece of stone, Avi snorted in annoyance. Brat. You even know the substitution. We have to admit, but he is really talented, only 6 years old, but he is already capable of this. At his age, I could only dream of something like this. The girl did not lie when she spoke of herself as one of the youngest knin of the clan. She was Yamanaka, like Ino. Avi was able to pass the exam at 10, and now she was already very close to Jonin's level. Choosing her as an opponent for Shikamaru was not a particularly smart decision. Of course he would have mastered simple sparring without chakra. But fighting in Taijutsu is a completely different level. The academy often conducts sparring without chakra, but now everything is different. Of course, Avi also did not overdo it, although there was no ban on ninjutsu, but she did not use them. He was half her age, not even a student of the academy yet. She simply could not use techniques against him. She would not have let her pride. Plus, if she had used ninjutsu, Shikamaru would have lost. But no one limited him. So using substitution, he quickly moved to the side, and then he quickly folded the seal. As soon as this happened, an incredibly fast shadow escaped from under the guy's feet. Avi barely noticed this shadow when she was already a couple of meters away. What the hell is this? The girl's eyebrows tightened and she, without thinking, moved back. She knew the shadows of the Nara clan well, but this was the first time she had seen such a fast one. No genin would have been able to escape her. Perhaps the strongest and most experienced of them. Already gone far enough, Avi realized in shock that the shadow had not stopped its movement at all. Unlike a normal shadow, this one lengthened a lot further and wasn't going to stop at all. Hope you like the video. Like, share and subscribe the channel. Also make sure you tell me your recommendation in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching.